The 2023 season is just a couple of weeks away, and it seems like Mercedes is the team that we're going to see improve the most compared to last season. The Silver Arrows have introduced the W14, a car that will have so much to prove to the F1 world, and without doubt the engineers have worked miracles in order to produce this masterpiece. But there are a couple of things in the design of the car that have made the F1 fans go, wow. And now there is no doubt that Mercedes will finally be competitive and push for a championship in 2023. As you already know, 2022 was definitely the most troublesome season for Mercedes, and the new regulations haven't been completely understood by the Silver Arrows. They've introduced a design that was considered innovative back when the cars were introduced to the grid, but during pre-testing and the first couple of races, we've been convinced otherwise. However, the team didn't give up on this concept, quite the contrary. They've even gone with a more aggressive approach and made the no-pod side-pod design even more notable. According to Wolf, if the team was to adopt the double-floor side-pod design from Red Bull, they would have been miles behind compared to their competitors. But while Mercedes made some significant moves in the side-pod design, making it more aggressive, the team has made revisions on the front wing as well. This is where the 2023 version of the car, more precisely the W14, is going to look a lot like the F175 or the 2022 version of Ferrari's car. The upper flap of the front wing is more wavy, and it's clearly visible that the team kept the wavy-edged end plates with the opening between a flap and another to affect the local flow increase of the outwash effect. Throughout the last year's races, at least at some of them, Mercedes used some vents that are going to be implemented frequently on the W14. These vents allow the engine to cool down better, and this is definitely one of the most important navigators throughout the Mercedes campaign to bring back the black livery. The cooling inlets were also revised, and now they are slightly larger. Many changes can be seen on the W14, and we wonder if Mercedes will be back in the race to win a championship sooner rather than later. While 2022 definitely wasn't their year, it seems like 2023 is going to be a season in which we're going to see Russell and Hamilton more frequently at the top spot on the podium. And apart from the livery, which was the most attention-drawing detail from the car reveal, there are lots of hidden weapons that Mercedes has installed in the W14. The solutions that we've discussed above are just the tip of the iceberg, and it's only fair of us to expect such a thing from Mercedes, given how much they were behind in the 2022 season. Let's stick a bit more with the side-pod design, because we believe that Mercedes' innovation comes to light when you look at this particular aspect of their design. The infamous upper SIS cowling is still present on the W14, and now we can clearly see how much narrower the rest of the sidepod is when you compare the Mercedes Challenger with the rest of the grid, at least viewed from the front. True, the fins and the mirrors do have a similar arrangement compared to the 2022 season, but now, at the front of the sidepod, the inlet is vertical, meaning that the tapered down and out toward the floor's edge version from 2022 is now gone. The flank of the sidepod is also wider compared to the 2022 season, as it also takes on more of a conventional shape in order to improve the flow to the rear of the car, just like we mentioned earlier in this video. Why are we mentioning all of these changes? First, it takes a lot of time and an immense amount of work to implement all of them on an F1 car, given the fact that the team has essentially repackaged the internal components and is continuing to find ways to bury the radiators deeper into the chassis than it has before. Although most of the grid has now implemented this design feature to some extent, the fact that the Silver Arrows were the first to do so gives them a head start and allows them to be ahead of their competitors. Now we need to see whether it will be enough to make the car even more competitive. But even if these solutions don't turn out to be the brightest ones, Mercedes won't bet on the case and has introduced an array of other changes as well. The cover shelf is one that the car has retained from the last season, but compared to what the other teams and Mercedes did in 2022, it now extends all the way down to the rear of the car and terminates in a wider rear cooling outlet. The shelf also has a geometry that resembles a chute rather than being completely flat, so that the various flow structures don't overlap as they compete for space. Now comes the interesting part, and that's the front wing. As you already know, this is a part that Mercedes wanted wanted to get very innovative with back in Austin, USA, but unfortunately for them, the regulations stated that the design itself should be banned. But now, although the new regulations allow Mercedes to mount the same front wing that was banned back in 2022, it is nowhere to be found on the W14. While we're left to wait to see whether the team will implement it in the following weeks, one thing is for sure: Mercedes is tweaking the design of the flaps. Earlier in this video, we mentioned that the flaps on the front wing are now floating and are only connected to the end plate by narrow brackets, which results in each of them having its own tip. However, we didn't elaborate on how this design is going to be considered a secret weapon for the Silver Arrows, and that's exactly what we're going to do in the following minutes of this video. With this design, the flaps are going to be able to shed their own vortex, which will combine with the airflow generated by the end plate's raised lower edge and another winglet that's mounted on the end plate above them. This eventually means that the front wing will be able to generate more outwash and help clean up the tire wake created by the front wheel assembly, which will improve downstream flow. And one thing that Mercedes struggled a lot with in the 2022 season is the loss of downforce due to having to drive the car with an increased height. The regulations are simple. If you raise your car, the porpoising will go away, but you'll eventually struggle with increased drag and decreased downforce, something that could hurt your car for as much as 1 second per lap. Now, with all of the cars having been increased by 10mm in the floor section and 15mm in the side section, Mercedes needs to find all kinds of ways to generate more downforce so that they won't struggle with the porpoising phenomenon. The front wing design is definitely something that is going to help the team achieve this goal, but the Silver Arrows took things even further, promoting a full carbon, black liveried car to the world that's supposedly 12 kilos skinnier. Apart from the porpoising issues, Mercedes had a lot of trouble with the car being overweight, which Wolf mentioned during the car reveal. When talking about this matter, the Austrian said, "We were overweight last year. This year, we've tried to figure out where we can squeeze out every single gram. So now, history repeats itself. You will see that the car has some raw carbon bits, along with some that are painted matte black. Of course, when we changed the livery in 2020, the main driving factor was to support the diversity and equality causes which are always close to our heart. The color black became part of our DNA at that point, so we are pleased to return to it. The front suspension geometry has witnessed some changes too, and this is definitely something that is going to help the car in combating the bouncing phenomenon. According to Mike Elliott, the technical director of the team, a lot of the work that they've done on the W14 wasn't possible to be mounted on the W13 due to resource constraints, or because their focus was elsewhere fixing other issues. Now, the team is going to keep the majority of the concept and the design that have been used in 2022. A season that proved to be a very devastating one for Mercedes, as they hope that the results are going to come in with a new array of changes. The fans are a bit skeptical given the fact that the same concept remained for the 2023 version of the car, but keep in mind that if there is one team that can bring itself back to the top after having a beatdown season, it's Mercedes. What do you think about the secret weapons of the W14? Let us know in the comments below.